From the News Channel 5 Network, this is OpenLine.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to OpenLine on Wednesday night. I am Ben Hall. Good show tonight. We're talking about the AMP. This has been a project that has certainly gotten a lot of attention. The mayor made an important announcement yesterday, said he would not pursue funding for the AMP in his final year in office. But the project lives. And that is what we are going to talk about tonight. What do you think? Where do we go from here? And we are very happy to have with us Stephen Bland with the Metro Transit Authority, the CEO. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Ben. Appreciate it.
So I want to start with what I just said. So the mayor announced yesterday he is not going to pursue funding in his final year, essentially saying the next mayor will have to pursue funding. But the project is not dead. The project lives. What does that mean?
Well, first of all, you know, the steps the mayor took and the announcement he made, absolutely the appropriate steps. The fact of the matter is, in any project this large, this controversial, it's a lengthy planning process for federal funding, for state funding, and we're still going through that process. Realistically, we looked at the timetable. We need to go back to the state legislature to gain approval for the project, and frankly, we will not be able to complete the planning process while they're still in session. So Mayor Dean made that calculation that it really makes no sense to try to go back at this point when that work hasn't been completed. But alluding to your earlier point, that planning work continues. The Citizens Advisory Committee work, which wrapped up just yesterday, has been an invaluable resource. We'll be able to refine design, continue planning, continue the public participation process, and frankly, I think we can make the project even better than what it already is.
So you are fairly new on the job. You started here in August, is that right?
Right.
And came from Pittsburgh. How do you look at this project?
Sure.
And do you think it needs to be resold to the community? What are your thoughts, looking from where you're looking?
Well, first of all, one of the things that attracted me to come to Nashville was a recognition by community leadership, obviously led by Mayor Dean, that whether it's the AMP, however we go forward, public transportation is going to need to play a much bigger role in the city's mobility future. We're projecting another 1 million people in the region within the next 20 years, and we're already running into congestion issues. So solving that issue, you know, is a fundamental challenge that we need to face. To move in that direction, frankly, where Nashville isn't different where cities like Denver, Dallas, Charlotte have been in the past, and that includes the controversy. People, when I interviewed here and when I came on board, said, well, what do you make of the controversy surrounding the AMP? I said, well, I've looked at all of the web pages, I've looked at the Stop AMP folks material, the AMP Yes folks material, and frankly, it looks very much like what other cities have gone through. So the controversy, in my opinion, is a healthy thing. I've talked to most of the opponents on the AMP Citizens Advisory Committee, have gotten their input. Frankly, they've asked a lot of great questions about the project and have a lot of legitimate concerns. And I think all of that process will make it a stronger project. And frankly, as we transition into a regional future plan for mass transit, makes that overall plan even stronger.
Is there a way that it can be done where the majority of people are happy? Or I guess, certainly, I don't know that everyone could be happy, but there was a lot of resistance. I think Mayor Dean on this show said he was surprised at some points how much resistance there was. So back to my resold question, you know, what is the next step now?
Sure. Going
out into the community saying, we've heard we need this and that kind of thing. What more needs to be said?
Sure. Well, I think one of the things is the context of the project. I think one of the fundamental challenges that Nashville has in advancing this project or any other major public transportation project is, frankly, in the history of Nashville, public transportation has played an important role, but not a tremendously large role in our regional mobility. Most people don't use it. A lot of the folks who use it are using it because, frankly, they don't have another choice but to use it. So it plays an important role in that setting. But a lot of the larger community here doesn't understand yet how it might fit into their broader lives. The thing I would say about a project like the AMP, what we would refer to in our business as more of a high-end bus rapid transit project, people look at the price tag of it and say that's an awful lot of money to spend on a bus line. And that's an accurate statement to make. What a lot of folks don't yet recognize, and what other cities that have done this, Cleveland is one of the models with their Healthline project, is the project's much more than the transit element. Transit's a piece of it, the stations, the branded vehicles, but frankly this type of project is a building front to building front, really renovation of West End Avenue and other corridors that we might put it in. It's streetscape improvements, it's improving the pedestrian environment, and I think folks who walk in that area would also agree that that's something that needs to be worked on. It's the streetscape furniture, it's tying in those connecting streets, you know, into that broader corridor, not only to make it a better experience, a faster experience for transit riders, but frankly anybody who uses it, whether you're a driver, whether you're a pedestrian, whether you're a bicyclist, that all of that is put into a neighborhood context.
And the next step now, the next mayor. And we've heard a little bit of discussion about it. I think, frankly, a lot of the candidates are a little uncomfortable talking about it. Where will you be when in that discussion?
Sure.
As this city now goes about electing its next mayor, who will then be responsible for pursuing funding for this.
Right.
Where will you be there?
Well, I guess I like to view myself as the technician, or at least, you know, one of the technicians involved in the project, being able to gather community input, trying to respond to that community input by improving design, making it more fit better into the context both of the neighborhood and a regional transit system. One of the criticisms I've heard that I think is somewhat valid, at least from a communication standpoint, is we get the AMP, we don't see how it fits into a broader public transportation plan. So one of the things we've talked about over the last couple of days is the need for the MTA as well as the RTA, the broader regional transit authority, to do that longer range regional planning to say, what does the regional transit infrastructure look like and how does the AMP fit into that? All of that information coming up through the next 6 months, really even out over a year with the strategic plan, I think will become a very important input to mayoral candidates and frankly other folks who are involved in the public policy debate. Ultimately, it's going to need, whatever we do, is going to need the support of the next mayor, of Metro Council members, of state legislators, of the governor, of TDOT, frankly, if this region's to move forward. And the one thing is, my perception is we certainly have the time to do this project right, preferable to do it right as opposed to doing it right now, as disappointed as many of us might be that, you know, maybe this appears to be a delay or a setback. But the one thing that is clear is every day that we wait, projects get more expensive, the cost of traffic delays and congestion get more expensive, more and more people move into Nashville, putting more taxing demands on our roads, on our bridges, and on our transit networks. So I don't honestly think that for the next mayor, the next council, whoever those decision makers are, I don't think that inaction is really an option. We're going to have to do something. We still believe that the AMP project is extremely viable. Certainly there need to be adjustments made based on the community input received so far and additional input we get. But the basic bones and the skeleton are there. We just need to enhance it.
Let's go to Greg on line 1. Hello, Greg.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. You know, this whole AMP thing is just really irritating to me. I believe that, you know, the citizens have said no. And what part of no don't these politicians understand? It's like, we don't want AMP, we don't want less lanes downtown, we don't want to spend an extra $100 million for a train to go down the middle of downtown to make it look all pretty. We want to be able to get through town more efficiently. And right now you're talking about the mayor doesn't want to touch this topic because he knows darn well that the citizens don't want this. So my message is just no. Heck no, 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 no. I don't care how you want to paint it. We want to call it something else. We want to come up with funding. It's like you guys have already, the legislators have already made up their minds that this is what we're going to put in there, whether the citizens want it or not.
All right, well, let's talk about that. He's saying clearly there's a lot of opposition. People have spoken. They don't want it. What do you say to that?
Well, I think I definitely have Greg's opinion very clear, so that's loud and clear.
Right.
And there have clearly been a lot of opponents, but to be honest with you, Ben, I've talked to a lot of people in Nashville, and there are also a lot of advocates. People who believe, first of all, believe in the AMP project, more broadly believe that an expanded, more robust public transportation network is going to be absolutely critical to the future of Nashville. So, you know, yes, there's been a vocal number of people who've been opposed to the project for a couple dominant reasons that, frankly, as I mentioned earlier, are pretty common to these projects that have been successfully completed in other cities. But we also hear from an awful lot of advocates who say not only do we need the AMP, and if there's one complaint that I've heard from them, is it's just not enough of it. Solid project foundation, but we need more of it. And I think that's those are voices that also have to be heard.
I've heard that it seems limited. It's just one area of town. And then, of course, the question of what about down Charlotte? You know, there are other areas of town where it could go. And so then the question I have would be, could it be reintroduced as part of a bigger, maybe more spokes in the wheel? You know, is there some thought, okay, so yeah, you'll refine the AMP, perhaps, and come back, but could it also come back with more areas being touched?
Great question, and it's actually one of the more significant criticisms of the current plan that I've heard, both from advocates, proponents of the project, which frankly, to date in the contacts I've had, have outnumbered the opponents, maybe not quite as loudly, but in numbers certainly. And that's part of what the regional strategic planning process is about. What does that overall system look like? So a couple pieces of that. Yes, I think we need to develop that plan. You know, certainly Mayor Dean is supportive of that and really directing the MTA to do that. And that makes things much clearer. On the other hand, frankly, I can't envision a regional public transit plan that would exclude West End Avenue. You know, that would include corridors like Charlotte, you know, like Gallatin, like Murfreesboro Road. But to say that, well, we're going to do a regional plan and we can't imagine that West End Avenue connecting to some of our largest medical complexes, significant office development, a lot of higher density residential development, not to mention Vanderbilt University, isn't an important part of that picture. So that's the thing I think people lose sight of is, yeah, it needs to be more robust and a bigger plan, but you need to start somewhere, and the West End corridor is an excellent corridor to start.
Okay, we're going to take a break. If you want to call, there's the number, 737-PLUS, 737-7587. We'll take a break. We also will hear from some of yesterday's meeting when Mayor Dean spoke. We have some excerpts from that. But if you want to call, again, there is the number. We'll take a break. Be back right after this.